In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can make your images go from this to this, using two photography techniques that are very often overlooked. What's up everyone, Nixon here, hope you're doing great and welcome back to another photography tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you about AEB to create an HDR image and how you can stack your HDR images into one panorama. This might sound complicated, but it really isn't. It's true that it's more of an advanced photography technique, but it's something I wish I did more of when I first started. Because oh boy, it makes your images look so much better. So let's start with AEB. AEB stands for Auto Exposure Bracketing, and it basically means that your camera takes images at different exposure settings without moving. Why is it good? Well, because then you can merge those images at different exposure levels into one. By doing that, you preserve the details in highlights, those bright parts of the image, and shadows, those dark parts of the image. Because you have probably experienced that if you point your camera or your phone at the bright sky, everything besides the sky gets really dark. But if you point your camera below the horizon, then the sky gets blown out, meaning it gets so bright that the camera can't handle it and it just looks white on your screen. That's because the camera, especially those on your phone, don't have large enough dynamic range. They have really small sensors, so they can't do it. So you need to decide when taking a picture, is the sky more important to you or is the subject that is in front of the sky? You can remove this problem and preserve both the subject and the sky using HDR mode on your camera or phone. It stands for High Dynamic Range, and it works by taking 3 or more images when you press the shutter button at different exposure levels, and then combines them into one image. So to create a HDR image, your camera does AEB, takes many images at different exposures and with some post-processing combines them into one image. Many high-end cameras also have HDR mode like your phone, but they only have it for JPEG file format. So if you're shooting JPEG, then turn it on and you're done. Then you can skip forward to the panorama section of this video for the next photography technique. But if you're shooting RAW, like I do, then I have to disappoint you and tell you that most cameras don't do HDR mode for RAW photos. Compared to JPEG file format, RAW files don't have any applied post-processing like colors or sharpening to your images. That way you can preserve all the colors and the details in the image, and you can afterwards edit them to your liking. That's why I highly recommend you to shoot RAW and manual if you want the best possible images with as much detail as possible. Okay, this is starting to get more and more complicated. Are you still with me? Good. Let's get back to the basics. If you have a drone, like I do in this example, you can use the AEB function so that the drone takes images at different exposures. It does one at 0 exposure, other at -1 and the last one at +1. You import those images into Lightroom, select them and use Photo Merge HDR. And now you get one RAW file that has information of all those 3 RAW files put together. So I told you that compared to JPEG files, RAW images preserve all the colors, don't apply any post-processing, preserve more data in shadows and highlights. And now we have combined 3 of those images to have basically unlimited information about an image, and we haven't lost anything. You cannot do that with JPEG. See how dark it is here? Not anymore. Want to see more of the sky? You got it. Easy as that. I did this with the drone, but you can do the same with your camera. But here it just goes bracketing mode because you need to select yourself how much you want to expose your image and for how many shots. I usually do 3 images at EV4. Now you have combined the images into one to create one super image or HDR image. What if I told you we can combine those HDR images even more? Then we can create a super amazing image. That's right, we are going to combine our HDR images into a panorama. You know what a panorama is. It's images stitched together to create a bigger image. Not bigger in information like a HDR image, but literally bigger in size. To do that, I took 3 images at different exposures, moved the camera a little bit up, took 3 more images at different exposures and moved even more up and took 3 more images. That's a total of 9 images. I combined each 3 of those images into one HDR image. And now we have 3 HDR images at slightly different angle. Now we select these images and merge them into a panorama. If you're doing this with a camera, you should use a tripod or be very steady when moving your camera up or sideways, whichever way you're doing a panorama. But in this case, I put the drone into tripod mode and tilted the camera manually slightly up with each shot, because the images need to overlap each other for Lightroom to stitch them together. So now we have combined 3 HDR images into one raw HDR panorama. Since this is a raw image, I will color grade it a little bit, and here is the final result. So now you know how to create a HDR image and how to make a panorama. You don't need to use both these techniques together when planning to take photos, because HDR is only useful if you have one bright and one dark object in the same frame, like the sun and your subject, or the sky and your subject. And panorama is great to use when you just can't get everything in one shot or in one frame, or you just want to show more of the thing you're taking a picture of. You can do these techniques with both your phone, your drone, camera, GoPro, anything. The settings are most likely different for each one, but the idea is same. So to recap, create a HDR image by taking the same image at different exposure levels. One dark, one bright, and one normal. And merge them together. Preferably do this with a tripod without moving your camera. To create a panorama, do it by tilting your camera slightly up or sideways with each shot and merge them later together in Lightroom. These images have to overlap each other in order for this to work. That's it! If you got this far, consider subscribing for more content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!